Good morning and welcome. This session is All Your Apple Belong to Us, Unique Identification and Cross-Device Tracking of Apple Devices. And our speakers are Zheng and Xiaolong Bai. So without further ado, please join me in giving a great warm welcome to our speakers.
Hello. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Zheng from Alibaba. It's my pleasure to speak at Black Hat. Today, I will share a topic about device fingerprinting and cross-device tracking techniques for iOS. The title of my talk is All Your Apple Belong to Us, Unique Identification and Cross-Device Tracking of Apple Devices. So let's start our talk. Firstly, I will briefly introduce myself. My name is Zheng. You can call me Spark. I'm a senior security expert at Alibaba. I got my PhD degree from the CUHK, and I'm a member of Blue Lotus and Insight Labs. I'm a regular speaker at Black Hat, ISA, DEF CON, HITB, etc. Xiaolong is my colleague. He is also a security expert at Alibaba. He got his PhD from Tsinghua University, and he published papers on Big 4. Here is the outline of our talk. First, I will briefly introduce the motivation of cross-device tracking. Then, I will list several approaches to uniquely identify the Apple device, even after a system rebooting or resetting. After that, I will present more advanced algorithms and vulnerabilities to associate Apple devices through deterministic user IDs, for example, Apple IDs and phone numbers, and probabilistic data link, like device names and IP addresses. Last but not least, we will discuss some feasible solutions, for instance, instrumentation and differential privacy to detect and prevent unique identification and cross-device tracking. Okay, let's start. We know that smartphones and laptops are the most frequently used personal devices. Moreover, iPhones, iPads, and MacBooks are very popular in the world. Therefore, lots of people have multiple Apple devices. For example, I have 5 iPhones, 2 iPads, and 3 MacBooks. A study by Google showed that 98% of surveyed internet users in the US use multiple devices on a daily basis. 90% of people switch devices sequentially to accomplish a task over time. But if there is no connection between devices, users may see random advertising things on their device. According to a survey by Google, customers usually take a multi-device path to purchase their goods. For example, 65% of people see an advertisement on a smartphone and then continue purchase it on a laptop. However, device switching may cause advertisers to lose their customers. Thus, people with ulterior motives want to connect to individuals through these devices. Identifying and correlating people's devices allow cross-device companies to track one person and target operations, for example, advertising on both of his or her devices. However, such cross-device tracking can principally reveal a complete picture of a person and become more privacy invasive than the tracking of individual devices without connecting them. Privacy is about people. Although Tim Cook said in the White House Cybersecurity Summit, he said, "People have insured us with their most personal information. We own them nothing less than the best protection that we can possibly provide. Well, in my opinion, I think Apple is really trying to provide the best protection for personal information on Apple devices. However, lots of approaches, for example, private APIs and vulnerabilities, can still be abused to uniquely identify users. Cross-device tracking is based on resolving two tasks. The first one is uniquely identify users' devices. The second one is correlating those that belong to the same user. For an operating system, a large part of maintaining privacy involves making sure applications don't have the capabilities to access users' personal resources, from documents to photos or unique identifiers which could be used to fingerprint the user's device. However, this is not an easy task. So now we will share some public APIs and private APIs which can be used to uniquely identify Apple devices. We know that device IDs are very helpful to build customized service, and it is essential to get to know users and offer them useful predictions. But tracking everything and build creepy suggestions that may put user at unease. In Apple products, the strategy is to offer short-lived, random, and anonymous identifiers. However, advertising and analytic companies, they want permit long-term tracking of a user without user control. So Apple provides developers some public APIs for device ID. For instance, UUID. It is a universal unique value that can be used to identify types, interfaces, and other items. In addition, vendor ID and advertising ID can be used to uniquely identify a device. More specifically, users can control them. When a user enables limit ad tracking, the OS will send along advertising identifier with a new value of zeros. So also we can click reset identifiers to set a new random value to advertising identifier. In addition, vendor ID can be reset by uninstalling all apps from the same team ID. Therefore, advertising ID and vendor ID are not enough for advertising and analytic companies. So lots of companies, they choose Keychain to help them trace users. Keychain gives apps a mechanism to store small bits of user data in an encrypted database. The most important thing is that the app's data stored in the keychain will not be lost even after the application is uninstalled. However, it's very easy for hackers to delete the data in the keychain on a jailbroken device. So keychain is useful for normal users, but it is not helpful to fight against the fraud or detect malicious use. For example, the first picture shows that we can dump app data from the keychain. And the second picture, it shows that we can use some circle commands to delete the data in the keychain on a jailbroken device. There is no doubt that most useful device IDs are hardware-based serial numbers like MEI. In iOS, we can obtain most of device IDs through the MG copy answer of lib mobile gusta.devlib. However, in order to get a valid value, some entitlements like com.apple.private.mobileguster.allowed protect keys are required. For instance, here is a POC of getting the MEI. We need to get the kernel task port at first, which means we need to jailbreak the device. After that, we can inject related entitlements into the process, and then get the value of IMEI through the MG copy answer. I/O registry also contains lots of hardware serial numbers. You can use the command IOREG on a jailbreaking device to see these serial numbers. For example, the I/O platform serial number, front camera serial number, etc. So what is I/O registry? The I/O registry is a dynamic database that describes a collection of live objects, for example, knobs or drivers. When hardware is added or removed from the system, the registry is immediately updated to reflect the new configuration of devices. Thus, it contains lots of device IDs. However, most of these values are protected by the IOKit get property sandbox rules. So is there a way to get hardware-based device IDs without a privileged escalation or jailbreaking? The answer is yes. For example, the MAC address. A MAC address is the unique identifier that is assigned by the manufacturer to a piece of network hardware, for example, wireless and Bluetooth. However, traditional method of obtaining a Wi-Fi MAC address has been pruned on iOS system. For instance, if we want to get the MAC address through getIf address, macOS will return a valid address, like this picture. But in iOS, system only return meaningless information, like this picture. It only returns zeros. But the iOS system may miss some side channel ways to get a MAC address. For example, socket function with AF_root and socket role parameters can be used to create role sockets. Only super users can create this socket in Unix and Linux. But in iOS, apps in the sandbox with mobile privilege can also create a role socket. Through role socket, we can access the ARP cache routines, which contains MAC information. However, in iOS 11, Apple doesn't allow apps to access the MAC address in the ARP table and read the MAC addresses from there during the scan. Because MAC addresses are unique and some developers may misuse them to track users. Another MAC address on iPhone is Bluetooth device address. This is a unique 48-byte identifier assigned to each Bluetooth device by the manufacturer, and it is very similar to the Wi-Fi MAC address. iPhone and iPad are using an integrated chipset supporting both Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. Because they are initialized at the same time during manufacturing, their addresses usually get assigned consecutively. For example, this is my iPhone 6. As you can see, Wi-Fi address and Bluetooth address are very similar. Only the last number is different. It means if we can get the Bluetooth MAC address, we can calculate the Wi-Fi MAC address as well. So now I will introduce one way to get the Bluetooth MAC address. But before we talk about it, let me briefly introduce the MAC messages. There are a rich set of IPC mechanisms on iOS, and most of them are available to third-party applications. The most frequently used mechanism is MAC message. It contains typed data which can include port rights and references to large range of memory. Based on MAC message, Apple developed the XPC, which is a lightweight mechanism for basic inter-process communication. Compared with raw mark message, XPC is safer and easier to use, but the cost of XPC service maintaining is very heavy. NSXPC message is built on top of XPC message, which allows the abstraction of XPC connects and remote objects. Through mark, XPC, and NSXPC message, sandbox apps can communicate with on-sandbox system service. So Bluetooth D is a daemon which handles Bluetooth-related requests. Bluetooth D communicates with sandbox apps and other on-sandbox processes, for example, Springboard. It runs a mark service called com.apple.server.bluetooth, and there are more than 100 functions in this mark service. We can analyze these methods by disassemble the Bluetooth D binary. After analyzing, we found lots of useful methods in the Bluetooth mark service. For example, we can attach to the Bluetooth server through BT session attached with run loop async. Then we can get a handler of local device through BT local device get default. After getting a handler of local device, we can use BT local device getting address string to get the MAC address of Bluetooth. And this picture, this is the POC and this is the result. From the result, we can see that we successfully get the Bluetooth address inside the app sandbox. Note that this method was available on iOS 12, but it fixed in iOS 12.1. In addition, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth address of new iPhone models are not consecutive. Maybe after iPhone 7, I'm not sure about that. Despite of that, Bluetooth address is still a persistent hardware identifier. It means it can be used to track user even after a system resetting or rebooting. In addition, users cannot control it. So it's a very powerful device ID. Okay, let's go to step 2, cross-device tracking. After the unique identification of devices, cross-device tracking companies must match those that appear similar. Successfully matching devices at scale is a core challenge for cross-device tracking. A device graph can be built from connected components with a maximum number of devices and edges. Deterministic data links devices together based upon user IDs. For example, Apple ID, phone number, and user account identifier. User ID can be used to correlate devices without any advanced algorithm calculation. But Apple can easily mitigate them as well. Sometimes we may not be able to get deterministic information to link devices. With probabilistic data gathering from public APIs, it is still possible to do cross-device tracking through the device graph algorithm. Probabilistic data links devices together based on a set of feature data that models the entity. For example, IP addresses, URLs, coordination information, and device names. The goal is to achieve a perfect matching of similar devices. The most important user ID on iPhone is the Apple ID. So now we will list several vulnerabilities which can be used to link Apple IDs. The first one is CVE 2014-4423 for iOS 8. Without sandbox checking, the AC account subsystem in iOS 8 allowed attackers to bypass a sandbox protection mechanism and obtain an active iCloud account ID. and metadata via a craft application. You can see the POC here. Firstly, we need to create an AC account ID, which is called com.apple.account.liverpool. After that, we can get the Apple ID through the account type with account type identifier method of AC account store framework. The second one for Apple ID link is CVE 217 6976. In iOS 10, Apple ID auth agent, it runs a MAC service that handles action regarding a user's Apple ID, including iCloud information linked to that account. It runs a Apple ID authentication XPC service, which could be accessed by any application inside the sandbox, and it has a flow that links Apple ID. You can see the POC here. We can connect to the XPC service and then send a command 510 to the server through a XPC message. Then we can get the linked Apple ID from the XPC message reply. Here is the third vulnerability for Apple ID link on iOS 12. This vulnerability is found by us. In iOS and macOS, Game Center has an NSXPC service, which is called com.apple.gamed. It provides interfaces to get authenticated player information. However, it doesn't have an entitlement protection. Thus, any applications inside the sandbox can access it and get the username of Apple ID. This vulnerability was fixed in iOS 12.4 after we reported this issue to Apple. A POC of getting Apple ID on iOS 12 is shown below. Firstly, we need to get a connection with the GameD NSXPC service. Then we can use get account name with handler method of Game Center Foundation.framework to get the information of Apple ID. In iOS, we also find another vulnerability in the AirDrop service, which can remotely link Apple IDs. Before we discuss it, let me briefly introduce AirDrop. AirDrop is an ad hoc service in Mac OS and iOS operating system. It enables the transfer of files among supported MacBooks and iOS devices over Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, without using mail or a mass storage device. It is used to set up an ad hoc Wi-Fi network using Apple Wireless Direct Link Interface, as known as AWDL. iOS client browser for AirDrop service via DNS responder and transmit files through the HTTPS web server. By analyzing the protocol of AirDrop, we can find that AirDrop agent discovers lots of personal information like flags, computer names, service names, and NW node addresses. Moreover, for personal devices with the same Apple ID, AirDrop agent also collects sensitive information. For example, from the picture you can see it collects the Apple ID usernames, which is the email address, and the email hash as well. This is the email hash. And we found that sandbox apps can use sharing.framework to interact with AirDrop service. Thus, we can use DROpen and DRSim to find some useful private APIs. For instance, we can use SF browser create to create a browser node and then use SF browser open node to start a browser scan. By using these private APIs, we could find nearby airdrop devices. Then we can get computer names, service names, which is a unique device ID, and display names from the browser callback. If the device belongs to the same person, we could get the Apple ID username as well. In this picture, you can see I can get the Apple ID. So we have reported this issue to Apple in the last year. Apple fixed it in iOS 12. However, this vulnerability was not fixed completely. Old iOS devices can still use this bug to gain device IDs and Apple IDs of other devices, even if they upgrade to iOS 12, upgrade to the latest iOS version. This vulnerability is very powerful because it can remotely gain sensitive information from others' device, and without installing a payload on others' devices. Okay, let's talk about another user ID link bug found by us. In iOS 9, we find a vulnerability in the com.apple.medialibrary.xpc NSXPC service. This vulnerability can be exploited to read, write, and query arbitrary SQLite files outside the sandbox. The sandbox app can use the begin transaction for database at pass method to connect to arbitrary SQLite files on the system. After that, it can use execute query to execute SQL commands. Here is the POC of SQLite query. But in iOS 10, this exploit doesn't work because Apple added a new privacy mechanism called consent alert purpose string. To make this exploit work again, we need to add a proposed string key name, which is NS Apple Music usage description to the project, and then call MP Media Library request the authorization method to get an authorization from the user. After getting an authorization, we can query arbitrary SQLite files. For example, the SMS message database, Gmail database, WeChat database outside the sandbox again. This database contains a large amount of user information. For example, phone numbers and Apple IDs. For instance, this picture shows that we can get the content of SMS messages on my iPhone. In this database, it contains lots of personal information. For example, the email address of iCloud, and the phone number of the sender. Phone number, also the message, and also the message information. Also, we can control the PC register of the Media Library D process using the FTS retokenizer vulnerability on iOS 12. This picture, the second picture shows that we successfully controlled the value of PC register to 41414141. So this vulnerability was fixed in iOS 12.2. But note that this vulnerability can be used to execute a GOP exploit and bypass the PAC mitigation in iOS user space. So if you have time, welcome to join us for another talk. HackPack, hacking pointer authentication in iOS user space at DEF CON tomorrow. But sometimes we may not be able to get deterministic information to link devices. In this situation, we can use probabilistic data through public APIs. Probabilistic data links connect a device to a person based on characteristic and metadata such as IP addresses, device names, URLs, and coordination information. It is worth noting that when the Apple device is initialized, Apple will set the device name based on the username. As you can see, the username, it will set whose iPhone and iPad. Although it's very convenient, it may reveal the user's information or even help the advertiser and analytic companies to associate the device. For example, by using the airdrop sniffing, we talked before. We can find this. We can find that in this picture you can see this iPhone and this MacBook Air belong to BXL. And we can find that this MacBook Pro and this iPhone XR belong to me. Moreover, we find that lots of people are using administrator as their username. So in our experiment, we used the similarity algorithm to calculate the distance between devices. The process of device linking through probabilistic data is shown below. Firstly, uniquely identifying a device through device IDs. Secondly, we calculate the similarity to each identified device. Thirdly, the device pair with the maximum similarity above a similar threshold. It's about 0.1. Fourthly, if such a pair exists, it is added to the device graph, and the next iteration starts with a new device. This routine is repeated in 4 consecutive stages, each evaluating similarity between IP addresses, URLs, coordination information, and device names, respectively. And finally, gathering the device graph that connect devices to specific users. Okay, let's discuss some feasible solutions, for example, instrumentation and differential privacy to detect and prevent unique identification and cross-device tracking. The first thing we should notice that data is very dangerous. Data not only bring power, but danger as well. Gathering data as overhead and liability. In addition, unexpected data adds more risks and distrust. For system service, we can use instrumentation to analyze the IPC-related API calls and messages of system service. These APIs may be abused to uniquely identify and cross-device track users. I think Frida is a very useful tool to do the instrumentation. We can easily hook related XPC sending and receiving functions through JavaScript and log out the object information. For example, this picture shows that I did some instrumentation for the XPC sending and receiving functions. So the next step is to analyzing the behavior of the apps, because we want to figure out which app is collecting sensitive information. So we can hook some well-known APIs, for example, IDFV, to get the vendor ID. After that, after hooking the well-known APIs, Frida can help us to locate the function of device info collection through the thread.backtrace method. For example, this picture, as you can see, this is an app which is collecting lots of user information. For example, the system version and BSSID and some coordination information. After that, it will send this information to its server. But through the thread.backtrace, we can locate this function, which collects this information. In this picture, you can see we successfully locate the information collection function. So by using instrumentation, for example, the CDR substrate and some tweaks, we can return random and fake device information to the app to protect our privacy. However, a total random value may make the app fail to execute. Thus, we can partially add noise to the data through differential privacy algorithm. Differential privacy provides a means to maximize the accuracy of queries from statistical database while measuring the privacy impact on individuals whose information is in the database. Thus, we can partially add noise to the data through differential privacy libraries to prevent cross-device tracking. For instance, Circle differential privacy is a query analyze and rewriting framework to enforce differential privacy for general purpose circle queries. And Apple also provides differential privacy framework in the user space. Moreover, in iOS iOS 13, Apple plans to add more mechanisms to protect users' privacy. For example, instead of using a social account or filling out forms, Apple will provide developers with a unique random ID. Companies cannot get the information of usernames and password, which means user ID link vulnerability become more powerful. In addition, Apple will prevent users from using Wi-Fi and Bluetooth to approximate your location without actually asking for it. It means getting location and MAC address related information in silence becomes more difficult. Okay, here is the conclusion. So in this talk, we first list several approaches. For example, some public APIs and vulnerabilities to uniquely identify the Apple device even after a system rebooting or resetting. Secondly, we present more advanced algorithms and vulnerabilities to associate Apple devices through deterministic user IDs, for example, Apple IDs and phone numbers. Then we talk about probabilistic data, for example, device IDs, coordination information, and IP addresses to do the device link. Thirdly, we discuss feasible solutions, for instance, instrumentation and differential privacy to detect and prevent unique identification and cross-device tracking. In the end, we want to thank our colleagues at Alibaba and Devin at Apple security team. In this talk, all 4 vulnerabilities we found and discussed in this talk were reported to Apple, and we believe our study can help Apple to maintain and improve the privacy of their products. So here are some references which are cited in this talk. Okay, that's all for my talk. Thank you for your listening. If you have some questions, you can send me messages on my Weibo and Twitter. Thank you. Thank you.